Real people, real stories, and real challenges that break the status quo. I'm your host, Zivile, and welcome to Perception Paradox. Welcome back to Perception Paradox. I'm Zivile, this is Kay, and we're here at TechBBQ recording this episode live in Copenhagen about life, adventures, tech, events. Welcome to Perception Paradox.
All of the above. Amazing. Thank you for having me, Zivile. I was so honoured when you asked me to be on the podcast. I think it's a great thing that you're doing. So, happy to be on here sharing everything and all of the above.
Amazing. I'm really glad that we were like, yes, let's do that. You're in town. We found the time in a very short period.
Yeah, it was easy.
Yeah, I really like when it comes to the smoothness of communication.
Yeah, and also a really nice way to just kind of, I say end the Friday. It's not quite 3 or 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
A nice way to kind of transition into the weekend, I think. Having a great
Well, I guess then we should have had some beer on the table.
know.
The Danish way. We can still fix that.
We'll do that off camera.
Okay, amazing. But so how are you today? Like it's now what? You're getting ready for the conference, which is TechBBQ, largest Nordic conference for startups, the whole startup scene. The summer is getting closer.
Yeah. I'm good. I'm definitely, we were just talking about it, feeling so much more positive and energetic now that we finally have some sun in Copenhagen. And not just a bit of sun, like beautiful days, which I think we haven't seen since last September, so it's been a really long time.
Since last TechBBQ, basically.
Yeah, basically. And then it all sort of goes downhill from there. I think that's also why TechBBQ is so nice, because it's like the last summer hurrah before people know, like, okay, it's gonna get cold, wintry, dark. So yeah, feeling good. Things are getting busy, but I'm feeling positive. And also, there are other events happening now as well. The event season is kind of like kicking off. You're seeing a lot more of the community around in a casual kind of way, just like networking and having a beer, and people are more out, which is really nice. So I think it's motivating for the next few months to get shit
I mean, the sun is out.
Yeah.
Of course, I was so surprised by the weather here on the side. I was like, oh my God.
I know.
It feels better than Spain.
Yeah.
Because I was in the windy part of Spain. But how do you deal with the Danish darkness? Because you grew up in a warm country. Didn't something you spend a lot of childhood somewhere where it's warm, and I remember the story, but maybe you can share
a little bit about
a
that.
little bit that,
Yeah, so I grew up moving around a lot. And yeah, you're right. Like a lot of my childhood was spent, I mean, the first 10 years I was living in sub-Saharan Africa. So I was born in Kenya, and then I moved to Namibia, and then I moved to Zimbabwe, and then I moved to Belgium when I was 10. And then we moved to Southeast Asia. And that was like Vietnam and China, so like really warm countries. So yeah, this kind of like cold thing for like several months in a row, I was not used to at all when I moved back to Europe, especially here in Copenhagen. But I don't know, I don't think I have any like tactics that I'm really like have a really strong hold on to. I sort of like take it by each winter, see how I'm feeling. I think it's also like a time to be like, okay, I'm slowing down. This is just what winter is. It's maybe not so much going out in full force and really being like, okay, let's have a chilled weekend. Let's go home and just spend time on making food and then like sitting on the couch reading a book. So I think just not having that expectation that it's going to be busy and you have to be out and about and meeting people and having energy, but just sort of doing the small things that feel mellow and maybe are more indoors. And then I think seeing people, seeing friends when you can and when you have the energy for it, and making it cozy.
Okay, so you went all into the Danish hygge.
Yeah, a little bit. It's also because like once it's cold and I'm home and it's dark, I'm not going out again. That's
why I try to do everything before going home, so you don't have to leave with them.
Exactly. Once I'm in the once I've hit the sofa or I've had my dinner, I'm not going out. So don't catch me outside having a drink post like 5 o'clock in the winter time, because I also have that like lazy element where it's like, if it's really cold and windy and horrible, I'm not getting on my bike.
How was it to growing up in so many different countries?
Really, really incredible. I feel like it's an experience that I didn't like choose for myself, but I'm so lucky that it happened. And I've had the opportunity to like see so many incredible things and meet so many incredible people and have access to cultures in a way that was extended, right? So I have an attachment to these places very much so because it was part of my formative years, and I've never done like the gap year kind of traveling. I've never done that, which I think is also something I'd like to try. What I've done instead is like really nestling somewhere and we've spent in each of those places, we were there for 3 to 4 years.
Well, that's quite a long time.
Yeah, so you're kind of committing to that one place versus doing a lot of traveling in many different places. So that was really incredible. I think, I mean, every kind of childhood has like really cool pros, and then you also have like the cons that you have to deal with a little bit later in life. And the pros was, of course, like seeing all these different places and having these amazing experiences. And then the cons is now as an adult being like, okay, I've moved to a country that is so clear on like the people here typically are very clear on where they belong and where they come from and the language they speak and their friends and family. Like my partner, a lot of his best friends he's known since they were like 6 years old. You know, his family's a 30-minute train ride away. Like he's just like so embedded and has like such a strong community in Denmark. And if someone asks him where is he from, he knows exactly. There's no second thought.
Yeah. What do you see when they ask you where you're from?
Exactly. So I'm like, it depends on who asks, really. Like I kind of, depending on who's asking, I can change the answer. So if I'm outside of Denmark and someone says, where are you from? And I don't want to do the whole long story, I'll just say, I'm Danish. And they won't know anything. They won't know any different. Yeah. Right? If I'm in Denmark and they say, where are you from? I'll be like, oh, I'm half Danish, half Irish. And then if they ask the question like, oh, where did you live? Then I have to go into it. So sometimes if I can't be bothered to tell the story, I'll pick one or the other.
Okay, you adjust
it depending on the circumstance. But then, yeah, I have kind of feet in different camps and...
That's so interesting. So how do you deal with the identity thing? Have you ever experienced the identity crisis in a way? Because even without being born like in separate country, like most of the stories that people grew up in one country and then they move and then they started having those identity kind of crisis thoughts where I don't know, where do I belong more? If it's like, let's say in this case would be Denmark or more like the home country or some another country where we spend a lot of time and feel more integrated.
Yeah.
Have you ever had this kind of doubts or how is it for you? Or are you just a global citizen? I mean.
It's true. That could also be a way that you kind of deal with it. I think I don't deep it so much because I think if I do, then I'll be a bit like, ooh, that's quite sad actually that I don't like know exactly where I'm from. But I definitely have moments where I'm like, I wish that it was clear for me, or like I wish that I had a really embedded like community in Denmark now that I'm thinking about like being here for the long term, because I have my family here still moving around. My sister lives in England, my friends in England who I like really like have like a strong attachment to are somewhere else. So it's more the feeling of I'm always missing something. There's always someone that I miss. And there's always something that I miss and something that I'm like, oh, I could be here. But then when I'm there, I'm like, oh, but I could be also in Denmark. So it's kind of like, to some degree, there's never like full satisfaction of being in that one place.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I look at my boyfriend or his friends and I'm like, you guys have it so lucky. Like,
so sorted.
So sorted. It's like so clear what you're going to do. It's so clear where you belong. It's so clear for you who your people are, and like you don't have to worry about not seeing your family for months on end. It's just like, oh, come around for dinner. These little things that I think as you become an adult, like as part of your daily life, you're reminded of like, oh, that would be really nice to have. So it's maybe that more community side, I think.
But actually, when you think about all the blue zones, all the cases, right now a lot of things are changing. So the main thriving factor is the community, the people you are surrounded by for all the longevity. And people drink wine, people still do stuff, but if we have people with whom we are together and can share those moments, it's kind of, that's what drives them, I guess, to continue
100%.
living, having the purpose.
I think communities are really, especially, I mean, I don't know if it's especially, but just like, you would have probably the same, like you're moving around so much. So it's, even though you maybe didn't have the same childhood as me, now your life right now is like bopping around and your family are here and then you're in Denmark and then you're in Spain and then you're...
And somewhere, Portugal, Germany, Africa, whatever,
So it's probably a similar feeling of like the day-to-day like community element and finding your kind of grounding.
Totally. And I think I started making some decisions way different where I've realized, okay, so for me, it's important the relationship and the people I want to be surrounded. I guess I'm very fortunate that I found people who are also about to change places, move places, but at the end of the day, there is a specific period of time where we meet everyone in the same place. So that makes you feel not alone.
Yeah.
And I could not imagine doing any different way.
Yeah, and you find your own tools for it. Like, you know, with you, what you just said, being on the kind of like event calendar and trail, you then have built a community within that space. Then you know that you're going to be going to this event and they'll all be there, and that's a really nice reunion. And sometimes those things are just as beautiful as having them every day in your life, is having that moment of like, you know.
You nurture that more, I think. When you know that you have limited time to spend together, you really are all in, fully present, and trying to use most out.
Yeah. I think having communities for different things is kind of something I've started to do more moving here in Denmark. Is like, I was much more used to growing up with like these are your 5 friends, 5 or 6 friends. You're like solid, you're together for however 3-4 years. And then also at university had a very like clear friendship group. And it was quite a big friendship group, but then it meant that you were always with these people for everything, whether you wanted to do sports, you wanted to do this or that. And I think now, as an adult moving here and kind of starting to build from fresh, I say fresh, it's like 6-7 years ago now.
It's been quite some time now.
It's been quite some time. But when I started, it was like, oh, okay, so I have a few friends from my master's. Then I have friends from where I'm living in Egmont. Then I have friends from this community I built, and then my boyfriend's friends, and then now work friends. So rather than just one group that know each other, it's loads of different groups for different...
But that's not really Danish.
No.
It's very like, I would say more
so
the
true.
way I was doing, but it's not really like Danish or in general, one type of local culture, which is more like grounded.
Yeah, together.
And embedded,
Yeah, so I think it's kind of, it's maybe more of an adult.
Maybe just more like you trying to see how can I meet the needs of the life you want to live, and then finding instead of trying to putting the wrong expectations to the wrong people, finding the right people to kind of do those things.
Yeah, 100%.
Maybe it's also could be that.
And also, maybe now if we're gonna deep dive, maybe it's also because a lot of these groups, within those groups, the basis may be like they're Danish or they've got communities that are there together people. So then it's kind of, I'm jumping in here with them for a bit and then going to there and then having this. And then they all have their own pockets that are their like kind of stable groups that have already existed. So for me, it's like I've got 5 different groups. They maybe only have the one, but I'm just jumping in.
You're a black sheep jumping in. Yeah. Bringing, hey, I'm here, I'm Kay. Hey, sorry guys, see you in 1 month.
But it's really,
that's life. It's all about just, there's enough space for all the different behaviors and groups, and as long as we're open to accept those different types of behaviors, that's great.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness. You know this, we already immediately jumped right into that. Oh, you've been in Denmark for quite some time. You mentioned you studied something, right?
Yes.
Was it like in the UK, or where did you study, or no?
So I did my bachelor's in the UK. That was in international development and anthropology.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really cool, really great degree. It was also, the university itself was very kind of politically active, very like forward thinking, a lot of like great professors and researchers in these spaces. And it was always like one step ahead of most conversations than other universities.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Really active, quite well known for like the protests and the demonstrations. And so I did that, and then I was like, wow, I need to do a master's, because in Denmark everyone does a master's.
Of course.
None of my friends, well, not all of my friends in England, it's not as much of a thing there. Okay. I realized that it's so expensive in the UK to do, already my bachelor's was expensive. So then I was like, okay, I've got to go to Denmark. And it was a good opportunity to like live here.
It was your first time living in Denmark, right?
Yeah.
You're still being half Danish.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm being like, okay, I've got the passport. I'm a Danish citizen.
You spoke the language?
No.
You didn't?
No.
Oh my God.
So I also was like, I can't have a passport, claim I'm Danish. This was also an identity thing. I was like, I'm Danish. Like, I would always come back for the summer, but that was a few weeks kind of isolated in a summer house. So I was like, okay, the Irish thing I've got, because it's the language, in terms of the language and everything. We have a very big family there, so I didn't feel like I needed to like figure it out. But with Denmark, because there was such a different culture and the language, I was like, okay, couple birds with one stone. Let's do the master's. It's free. Learn the language and see like what it would be like to kind of absorb more of this side of of being as my
Were you afraid or more curious?
curious, but also like a little bit afraid. But I'm very lucky because my sister, she did her master's in Copenhagen, and I basically just did everything she did.
Oh, so that's great.
Yeah.
So we had the learning example.
Yeah.
So that's a good example. Like just see who already done that before and repeat some patterns.
And it's almost like to the exact thing. Like she first studied at Sussex in the UK.
Yeah.
And then I went and studied at Sussex in the UK.
Oh my gosh.
She went to Copenhagen, and then I went to Copenhagen.
Okay.
And then she became a founder, and I joined TechBBQ.
Oh, that's how it happened. Okay, so your sister became a founder, you joined TechBBQ. Do you have someone in your family when it comes to entrepreneurial spirit?
I think, not really. It was not really so much a thing. But I think my dad had a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, but I think he was more of a, let's try and get rich quick with this like really random idea that just like blows up in his face and doesn't work. Like a bit like mad scientist, but like more like mad entrepreneur.
Is he a scientist?
No. More like that kind of energy of like, I'm just going to buy loads of these and then like resell them and then like, no one wants to buy them. And you're like, okay, that was a waste of money.
Oh my God.
So the more of the successful, less thought through version of an entrepreneur.
That's great.
Yeah. But my sister, she's maybe a bit more like that. I think it's like also older child thing. I don't know.
Maybe yes, maybe no, I don't know. But so what brought you to TechBBQ actually? Because you were studying before, working before in some different companies, but it was not really related with startup ecosystem, was it?
No, not at all. It was still like NGO, non-profits. I'm working more like in the very kind of loosely DEI space. But I graduated from my master's and I literally handed in right when COVID kicked off. So it was April and March was when we had the first like big lockdown. And it was just such a shitty time to be like a new graduate in a country where you don't speak the language and the market's already a bit difficult. So you're
from here, but not from here.
Yeah.
It's kind of...
Didn't know what the fuck I wanted to do. And it was a really interesting degree, but it was so not useful.
What kind of degree was it?
It was spatial design and society. So it's basically like the anthropology of like designed objects, designed spaces. Who are these spaces for? How do you engage with them? Like really like theoretical. But then I would be applying for like design agencies and architecture firms and places where it would make sense for me to contribute. And they were like, super cool degree. Do you know how to design?
No.
I have no skills. And they were like, yeah, right now. I mean, we're looking for architects or landscape designers or urban planners. And I was on Dowping, which, when you graduate, you get like money from the government while you're kind of searching for a job. So I was on that for actually like almost a year before I found TechBBQ, which was during COVID. So everyone was kind of indoors anyway. Like there was a lot of stuff that I didn't feel like I was like not participating in like getting a job and being, everyone had to go to work and stuff because everyone had kind of come down a bit and it was a little bit of a weird time. So it didn't stress me out too much. I picked up some small hobbies to keep me going and then, found TechBBQ completely by chance. Like wasn't really looking for the startup ecosystem.
It found you.
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh my God, that's amazing. And the rest is history. You're still here building great programs.
As they say.
And then what's happened? You fall in love with the tech scene, or how did you find yourself coming into a new ecosystem with very different skill set and kind of learning a bit what's happening with the venture capital founders? How do you think that helped you? I would say succeed because I've experienced your work, I've seen it. How did it help you to be different and to build good program while being outside the bubble?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think sometimes it probably helps to have someone, or I mean, I'm sure everyone could do this job really well, but maybe in my case, coming without the knowledge of the ecosystem, having someone who is objective and is like, I'm seeing everything as an equal opportunity here.
Okay.
So I don't have an agenda in this particular space. I don't only consider the founder view because I've been a founder or within a specific industry. I'm agenda-less right now. And so everyone has equal opportunity to kind of participate and show or like tell me about how important it is what they're doing, because like I don't know these things. They know more than I do. So in that way, I think that objectivity, at least very much to start with, was super helpful. And then I think having with this particular role, I think the anthropology helped because that's really analytical. It's very research heavy. It's very like trying to understand complex ideas, put them together, see how they intersect. What angles are we looking for? Okay, what kind of how do we understand that people's perceptions differ because of their positions in society? And so in constructing like a program, you're dealing so much with like different industries, different perspectives, different backgrounds, diversity, tech, like, and how do all these things come together? So it's very like creative in a more like theoretical anthropology way for me. Like I still get to use that in doing the program.
That's pretty exciting. Very good angle and connection, actually. So how do you find inspiration to every year to look for new things and to find this kind of, I don't know, some kind of different angles? Because when we do something once, there are two ways we can go about it, right? One way is like, oh, it's working.
Yeah.
We're just going to repeat the pattern, but it's not the case for events. With events, you need to innovate all the time. You need to progress. You need to be up front the trends and what's happening. So how do you actually keep up with this innovation and growth and trends?
Yeah, it's a really good question because it is difficult.
And what do you keep? What do you create new? Because you cannot change completely everything new. You need the core.
100%. And you also like, things change really quickly.
Yeah.
But also there are big conversations that don't change year on year. It's something that we know is going to be a challenge or an issue for years to come. So, but you still want to make sure you're not repeating the same messages each and every time. So it is really difficult actually to do that. And I think it's a work in progress, but it's definitely helpful now that I have a bigger network than when I first started.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the program is 100% like a community effort.
Totally.
You know, it takes a village to build that program.
Yeah.
So it's the people who are working in their specific industries or with their own stakeholders. If you're a VC or or startup founder or community player, they're the ones who really have the boots on the ground and are actively working with day-to-day challenges and seeing the trends. So for me, I'm like, I trust the community to know what they're talking about and what they're seeing as being important day to day, year to year. And then I kind of act as more of a helicopter to be like, oh yeah, actually you're right. That conversation is evolving. I'm hearing that happening in other places. Like that sounds like something we should really put together. Or I then see articles that connect. So I think it's talking to people. It's hearing about what they're doing. It's having a really open mind for people to come to me and share what they're working with. And then of course, when you just have the classic like tools that you read articles, you see what's being talked about. But it is difficult. And then I think there's some things we try to do like a bit more of like a wild card. It's like, we don't know if this is being talked about, but I think it's a cool thing that we should platform.
For sure.
And see if people respond. And if they do, great. And if they don't, we move on.
Right. And where do you see the events industry going, right? We had quite a bit of a shift after the COVID until things picked up back.
Yeah.
Now we see a lot of, well, the way I see a lot of also some events getting bigger, some events smaller, quite some of them closing down actually. What kind of trends are you seeing right now? And what's I always like to ask, what's the future of the events?
Yeah, it's such a, I think you'll get different answers for this. For me, I think, after COVID, it was very much okay, let's get back on track. Let's get back to scaling. Let's survive. So first it was survive. And then it was like, let's scale. I feel like people wanted to get back into the game. Like TechBBQ as well has been scaling. I think, let's get back to that place where we were, where there was like a real hype in 2018, 2019. Get back to that point.
Yeah.
And now I think, and maybe before then, the big thing was like really to just grow. But now I think people are thinking about what is the value we're actually giving to our attendees. And I think that often comes with size as well, and creating an atmosphere creating an atmosphere where networking is really, really valued in an authentic way, which is hard to achieve. And then it's also like making sure relevant for whatever event is happening, right? Because I think if you get too kind of crazy with your event or too big, you can lose that relevancy for like who your target community is. And so you want to make sure that the people who are attending and participating have something shared with each other.
Yeah.
I was at an event yesterday, just a shout out to Mashup. And Nino from the team was great, and he invited me. And it was maybe like 300 people, and it's very VC and like founder focused. It was in Malmö. 300 people, founders and investors, and I'm like a community player, so I didn't really fit into any of those boxes necessarily. But the vibe was so good because it was just like, there's one room. We know why we're here. It's for the founders and investors to connect. That's it.
That's great.
It's matchmaking.
Yeah.
And there was like a little bit of content, but not overkill. And so you could just see that people were spending so much of their time in the meeting rooms, chatting to people, really making the most of that event, but in a way that didn't feel transactional at all. And I don't know how they did it. I think it was being super clear about their intention, super clear about their demographic, and then making sure that what the outcomes they're looking for people to have, they've put as the focal point. And that was just networking and chatting and coming together. And then you would like walk around, and then you'd see the same faces again and again because it's a small event, and so then you get chatting, and the feeling of community was created very quickly for a day event. I only went to the
That's really great.
Yeah, and so I think there's also, I think not doing overkill scale is the future of events.
I could agree with you about that. I've just got back from, well, not just got back. One of the recent events I went to was in really quite small. And I think that for them being kind of not too big but small, where you can bump into each other, it's kind of also a very good selling point. There are different outcomes of the events, I guess, what you want to do, what you want to reach, and what kind of impact you want to create.
And I think that really comes from the organizers, is to make sure that everything you're doing, you are intentional about. Like you've thought about, okay, why did I make this decision and who is it for?
Yeah.
And how does it add to the value I'm trying to create for our attendees? It's not just, fuck it, let's do this and let's add this and let's create this other event. And because, I mean, there comes a point where it can just be a bit messy and people don't understand what their position is in these events and like how they're supposed to navigate. If the event itself is confused about what it's offering and what its intention is. But the more that you like create intentionality in all of your decision making around the infrastructure and how you target your attendees and how you communicate, and the more that the end user, or I say user, but like your community is going to feel that, and it's going to make their experience clear, you know?
Totally. What do you think is the most challenging thing when running an event? There are many challenges, right? But like, let's say in your case, you're responsible for program. Program is the bone core kind of thing. One of them is, of course, the layout and setup. Of course, then whom you're going to get into the room.
Yeah.
But then to get those people in the room, you need to have the program. And you need to have this narrative.
Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head by talking about staying ahead of the curve and like how do you make sure that we're like tackling conversations in the right way. That's always difficult because there are so many, being an event like TechBBQ where we're there as, you know, a kind of vehicle to support founders and the startup ecosystem without being industry specific. There's so many conversations we need to keep track of in so many different industries at so many different levels from so many stakeholder perspectives. So it's always, I think my biggest worry always is like, am I actually representing what people want to hear in the way that they would expect of an event this scale? Being someone who's not necessarily like a founder, investor, or someone directly, you know, kind of operating in that space. So that's definitely something is just wanting to kind of provide the best value content for our community. And then I guess like, you know, you're dealing with like 350, 400 speakers. So it's just like the like actual logistical prep work of that and the scheduling and making sure everyone's well informed and that everyone, and you can't do that with all 400 people, but creating systems that at least speakers hopefully feel like whatever, you know, contact points they've had with TechBBQ has been like a good experience.
Totally.
So that's, and also just, scheduling and all of it. But
that's a lot. It's a lot, but it's fun. It's fun once you get it started, right?
Yeah. And the days of the event are just so fun because at that point you've hopefully prepped so hardcore that every detail is secured so that when we turn up at the event, of course, there might be some last minute things you need to deal with, but that you and us as TechBBQ can actually just enjoy the event and not be working, so that it kind of breathes its own life. Like at that point, once the event starts, like I just have to let it live.
Yes.
Because if things happen, there are certain things I can't control, and you just have to either be ready to problem solve or just be like, this is the nature of working with people and being a human centered thing, and you know you've just got to keep calm.
I love it. I think during the last couple of years, especially, I've noticed how more with a new venue, new setup, and kind of new approach, I guess the guys who started doing things, this whole energy thing, like keeping it cool, has shifted so much.
Yeah.
And it was so cool to see you also enjoying the event, walking around, talking to people. I think it's very crucial
Because
to
that's
keep
it.
that.
Absolutely. Like, I don't want to, I've spent all year kind of working towards it. This is now the 2 days, because I spent all year talking to people about these 2 days. And so when this 2 days happens, I want to be able to actually spend time with these people who eventually it's going to burst like a bubble and everyone's going to leave and you're going to have the blues.
And then we're going to meet in karaoke.
Yeah.
There was one, I remember karaoke when we ended up going.
Yeah, most likely. Yeah, the after party is always a lot of fun.
Oh my God.
But yeah, it happens so, it comes and finishes so quickly.
Yes.
So I really, every year, I'm like, take every moment and just enjoy it.
Beautiful. Do you have any most memorable moments from one of the events? Something would be like, oh my God, yes, that was the moment.
I think, well, after my first event, I really felt like there was such a heavy, like when it closed and it was like the last session had ended, I remember like the biggest feeling of like relief.
Mm-hmm.
And then that has actually kind of subdued over the years because you know now, and it's less of like because the first time I did it, I had no idea what to expect. What is it going to be like? That was like a really big feeling that I remember super clearly. And then I think, I don't even know if I could say it on this podcast, but and also that first year we had a big after party after the event and everyone was so elated and happy and just like, excited that it went well.
Yeah.
And one of our really big speakers from that year, they came for a little bit at the beginning and then they left. And we were having like a team after party. And Sam, our COO, was going home. He was like, okay, guys, I'm going to leave you. This is the end. Like,
this is the end.
This is the end for me. I've got to go home. So Sam left. And then about 30 minutes later, we're all at War Pigs in meatpacking. Sam taps me on the shoulder and he's like, look who I found. And it was one of our A-level speakers. We say A-level, high profile, kind of well-known names and companies who he'd found walking along the road. I was like, oh, you've got to come back. We're having a big party. So this very high profile name ended up joining TechBBQ's after party and was out with us at War Pigs and then to this random club thing until about 5 a.m.
No way.
Like dancing with us and like having the best time. And it's just like a memory that every time I see their face now on like LinkedIn or doing cool shit, I'm like, I remember you at 5 a.m.
That is so cool. That's the thing, what I love about events. Like not only the content and what impact we can create, but connections.
Yeah, and just reducing all the barriers and we're just like coming together. I think it's really, that's also just, I think every year is like actually getting to know people in a non-professional capacity. Like, oh, have you booked your tickets? Oh, this is what you're going to talk about. But then that's done because the event has happened. Yeah. And then you actually just get to connect. And that's like one of the most fun parts for me.
For sure.
Yeah.
How do you think we can encourage people to take action and to make change through events? Because sometimes you can notice like people come, we get inspired, but there is nothing without taking the action.
It's a really good question. I think we can ask as organizers, we can ask people to take action if we do it ourselves, right? So in anything and it's always like a work in progress, but if we put up content or share messages about things that we want our attendees to take away, I think that as an event and as a community of TechBBQ, we should already be working with. So like as organizers, do your best to create a platform where people can see that you've done your bit within the scope of what we do, which is building events, that then can inspire them to be like, oh, they're walking the talk. How can I do the same thing? And then asking, if I think about, the content is very much a one-sided thing, right? Because it is people talking on stage. The audience doesn't necessarily get to like engage in that conversation. But I think as much as you can, trying to get people, and this is maybe more my kind of background coming into play, but I like to try and at least situate what's happening in the startup ecosystem in something a bit bigger.
Okay.
So that people understand like, oh, yeah, I'm building a startup, but what does that mean for the world around you? how are you contributing to conversations in this space? And like, how are you making decisions as it comes into the climate conversation, or like the communities you engage with? So making sure that we're not just only building focused, but I think in order to solve big challenges, you have to understand like what role you play and like what decision-making power you have and how you can influence stuff around you, so that everyone can kind of benefit a more, I guess, like sustainable, kind of brighter collective future, right? Because we can, and I think naturally a lot of the startup ecosystem, they very much get into their bubbles of like solving things quickly and the urgency of building and raising money, and your startup or your fund or whatever really is your baby, and there's a lot of pressure. So the external noise maybe isn't always there. And I think that's what TechBBQ can do, is kind of remind people how we're all connected and how these decisions can impact the world around us. And then hopefully that kind of resonates and is back of mind at least the next time they have to make a decision or think about who they are and what they're doing.
Very nicely put, I have to tell you. Super, like from the pitch deck. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, that makes sense. And now touch basing on the different stakeholders. Some of them are people who make that happen, right? And I've been in many conversations with someone who is inspired by the event scene, but like, okay, how do I break to the event scene? You've been someone who's been around now for a while. What would be your approach? How can people break through and start working with tech events?
I would say, so I think I came in at a little bit of a different time when there was maybe, because we were smaller and things were a little bit tricky with COVID, it was like, what's even happening?
Oh, yeah.
So there was a lot more like actually like openness to people who wanted to engage with events, because it wasn't the most like secure. They were just happy that I was like applying for it, I think. But I would say, well, firstly, there's so many levels, but I would say like volunteering is a really good way. I know people that have volunteered with our program team before, and now they're building their own hubs, their own communities, doing their own events. So it's a great way to like pick up skills on the back end, and also just like event day volunteers, right? You can really make some great connections and just see what it's like in practice. Do you even like it? Because events can feel like one thing or look like one thing, but then actually actively working with building something for over a long period of time where there's a lot of expectation, it's so fun. But like, it's also not for everybody, but it can maybe feel like it.
Yeah.
So like doing what you can to maybe like test it out, do some volunteering, see if it's a space that you enjoy, build those networks whilst you're there, like, ask your team for connections. And then, kind of build up a little community, or like you could even curate sort of your like LinkedIn. That sounds like really specific, but follow people that are in this space and like listen to what they're saying, look at what they're sharing, what events are they going to, is it free, can I join, okay, sign up, and then try to kind of connect with people in that way and get a sense of if it is something for you. And I think by engaging in these spaces and kind of building up your own resume first and just showing the interest speaks volumes over, maybe the experience side.
That's a good point. And also just meeting people, connecting. Yeah. And I think important thing to highlight that volunteering does not have an age limit. That's also like, I know some people who are like, I would like to change it, but like I'm maybe already too old. There is nothing too old. You can just join the event, go, do the shift, and see, maybe that's something I've been waiting my whole life looking for, and then figure out the rest. Just talk to people.
100%.
Yeah.
We've had people of all ages, of all backgrounds, from all industries who are just like either interested in the event space, interested in the tech space, interested in climate, and they have their own agendas. It is absolutely for everyone, and it's a great way to like not commit quite yet, but to just
test it out, to see it, because it's all about testing. You cannot commit without knowing for what you're committing 100%.
For. And get one person, if you get one great contact, someone you have one really good conversation with, that is worth more than 10 hellos and like quick ones, and you can go back and build from there.
It's not about the quantity.
Yeah, it's really about like, you could make meet a friend or make a contact who you just know that from that conversation and what you kind of built in the event can last longer.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, so still maybe wrapping up a bit about TechBBQ, I have some other questions for you. What's up this year for TechBBQ? Why people should look into the agenda and should make their way to Denmark, or who should make their way to Denmark?
That's a very good question. I think, so I'm not going to speak from the program side yet, but I just think that TechBBQ has created a great atmosphere. And I think that is really great for events and like inspiring people to then have the energy to connect and talk to people and feel like it's an inclusive space. So I just think like the atmosphere that has been established in and of itself with the kind of community that we have, and then the outdoor, indoor, like there's a good mix. It doesn't feel like, crazy conference. You have to get the most out of it as possible and it's super hectic. If you want to do that, by all means, it's all there for you. Like there's going to be, 8,000-9,000 people. So you can definitely do it that way, but you can also just like relax into it and take your time and kind of have your own agenda that's not like pressed. So I really like that because then there's also this, people are kind of more like open to spontaneous conversations and taking it chilled. And it's not this like everyone's back to back and therefore you can't meet people, through serendipity because everyone's just back to back meetings. So it's got this ability to like be productive and then also let yourself go with the flow and still that be like valuable. So on that level, I think it's really great. I think we have, just amazing people attending TechBBQ every year as attendees and they also contribute to just like great vibes. And then if you want to know what's happening in the Nordics, it's a concentrated event for the Nordic region and Scandinavia. So you really get to understand like who are the players, what are the challenges, like what are the big conversations. But because I think the Nordics are becoming, they're kind of growing on the map of these like core kind of global players as well. It's becoming like a very like, people are really looking in on the Nordics and they're interested and they're curious. It also means that when you come to TechBBQ, whilst it's like a Nordic event, you also have access to these people from the outside who are also really important part of like your journey. So you can meet the international investors, the cool founders from abroad, like the community players. So we managed to strike quite a nice balance between being Nordic, but also relevant for the international ecosystem. And then
nice.
Great speakers.
Great
program.
Great vibes,
Best
great
program.
Hugo and all the thing about the Copenhagen. One more question. So you're also running a newsletter, right? Which is your pet project.
Yes.
Can you tell more about that? I think for me it became the number one source now, but gives me an overview of what's happening across the Nordics.
So nice.
Because it's quite difficult to follow the whole European scene like across more in depth. So before going in depth, it's really nice to have a roundup. How did this idea happen to you to start creating the newsletter about the Nordic scene in startups?
Yeah, it was kind of more just for me at the beginning, and it still kind of is. Like, it's not a massive, worldwide, thousands of subscriber newsletter, but it is very targeted. But I think when I did my first TechBBQ, when I just got the job and I was like, holy shit, I have to build a program around topics and with people that I have no clue about. I didn't know any founders in Denmark. I didn't know anything, and I had to build that program, and I was so panicked about all the stuff that I didn't know. Yeah. So I started signing up to loads of newsletters about like entrepreneurship and tech and fundraising, but a lot of it was either like pan-European or like global newsletters that covered like big rounds with big companies. And I was like, that's cool for like a kind of macro image. But like, we're a Nordic event. I need to understand what's happening in the Nordics in English, not from multiple sources. I want like a roundup. And at that point, I couldn't find it that wasn't in long form, or at least like big chunks of text that wasn't in English and that didn't cover the Nordics. So I was like, I had signed up to loads of different things. And then I thought, okay, well, once TechBBQ ended the first year, it was a lot slower after September. There goes again. It was a lot slower after September. So then I was like, okay, I've got time in my hands. This is also a really good way to like contribute to my learning in TechBBQ because I need to know this information. Yeah. So then I just started to curate like my LinkedIn to create updates for me that came through like organically, and then follow loads of different sites. And then I've been doing it, for the last 2 or 3 years now.
Oh my God, it's been that long?
Yeah, at least 2.5 years now. I know, I'm
still a fan who replies to your newsletter emails sometimes. I think I've done that a couple of times.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I'm proud of you. I mean,
thank you.
Keeping it consistent, and I think it's really, you're doing a great job with that.
Yeah, it is definitely, you have to, kind of keep yourself motivated sometimes, because, I'm doing it every week, so you're like, okay, Saturday it's sunny, but I'm going to be inside making sure that this is
that
finished.
Goes out, yeah.
But I'm wondering, where to take it next. I'm like, just if anyone wants to buy it off me, this is an ad.
There is an opportunity.
You can
have God, should I now put ad sponsor? Okay, there is an open opportunity to explore. Whatever, how you say it. Okay, so TechBBQ, newsletter, what do you do? How do you, make your mind free from all the tech scene and startups and vibes?
So in the time that I'm not spending on that, I think it's, spending time with my partner who's not at all involved in this space. So
that's refreshing.
That's so refreshing, yeah. It's quite nice to have those completely different worlds. He's more legal and he's with Danish Refugee, International Human Rights Council organization. So he's in more that space. And then I have the tech space. So we can talk about it, but it's not in every conversation part of the everyday. I have a dog, and so of course that just that's one thing. And then just getting some air, spending time with friends, and doing activities that don't relate to that.
Great, just living life. Living life. And I think it's very important because we forget to do that very often. And I was about to say whoa, but I've got one more question.
Okay, go.
Since you've been traveling your whole childhood, it was every 3-4 years. And right now it seems like you became most grounded for the whole since ever. That's perhaps the place where you spend most of your time.
Yeah.
How did it change your way of traveling and the way you see traveling?
I haven't yet done any kind of traveling that is the 4 to 5, 6 months sort of long kind of changing thing before. So I'm definitely more at the moment going on a holiday and traveling, and then not trying to overdo too many things at one time. I like to kind of be somewhere and settle a little bit in that. But it's definitely something I think about in terms of, is it something that I want to do, and do I want to continue to travel in that way and have that similar kind of lifestyle? Because also traveling in any other capacity, it's also expensive and it takes time, and you have a job now and you have things that a dog, for God's sake, can't just kind of disappear and go see this place and go away for 3 weeks. So I think that that's actually more what has kept me a little bit lower, and maybe doing a nice summer holiday. And then throughout the year, it's small kind of trips around Denmark or close in Europe. But being conscious of too much flying, which I think anyway with
it's very difficult.
Much,
I've been really having internal conflicts in a way for that, because it's kind of, you want to do what you're doing, but then you have to change your career, and my life is all about different locations. And then how can you make it more sustainable, or can you do it online? But I think with the world that turns so much online, the physical interaction will be just priced higher and won't go away at all. It just, we need human connection one-on-one, not through the screens.
100%. And that's what goes back to your question earlier about what the future of events is. I think events are going to be absolutely fine. The ones that really understand their community and what they're doing and are providing real, authentic, human connection and value are going to really succeed, because people are so hungry for that. They really want to have these moments where it's shared. So you're so right. I think it's so true.
Cool. So, okay, I have this tradition here.
Oh no.
We're gonna do a quick, no, I'm joking. So basically every guest who joins the podcast, I always ask to just finish this episode, the episode we're doing, with one thought we can all ponder through the day after the episode goes live. I don't know, a question to think about or some idea that would help us just to get closer to our authentic selves and the lives we want to live.
I know that it's not always possible to be so intentional about it, but how can you make sure that whatever you're doing, you're kind in what you do. And it doesn't have to be like a big thing. It can be small things. It can be the way you talk to a colleague when you're stressed. It can be, you know, how to maybe not center yourself in something, creating space for other people, and how can you kind of, lead with being kind.
With kindness and compassion.
With compassion.
How can you lead with compassion and empathy?
Yeah.
That's a great way to end it.
Sounds really cheesy, but
it's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true.
And patience in that, because I think sometimes takes effort, and just being patient with people. How can you be more patient with people?
Okay, how can you be more patient with people?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's what my dog taught me, to be super.
Be patient. Get a dog and you will learn the patience. Amazing. So, where can people find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Kay Michelsen, and then MondayFriday Substack Newsletter.
We will put the links.
And I mean, TechBBQ. I'll be about this
cool.
system.
Amazing. Thank you, Kay, for finding time, for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. It was Kate from TechBBQ and Perception Paradox.
Thank you so much for having me. Peace.
Bye. Ciao.